Hi, thanks for joining the breakdown. I'm your host, James Sayer. Jordan Pierce is here tonight to talk with us about nuclear war near misses. That is our topic. Now, we all know that nuclear war is a serious danger, but no nuclear bombs have been used since the U.S. used them against Japan in 1945. Now, it's become fairly widely accepted by many to believe that these nuclear weapons are terrible but necessary deterrents. And that now, since we and others, including some pretty evil adversaries have them, there's no way to eliminate them. They're a reality that we must live with. Now, is that true? That's a tough question. But first, let us look at some of the close calls that we've actually had with going to nuclear war. Now, there were a lot more than I realized. And we're also going to look at some nuclear weapons significant incidents called bent spears and nuclear weapons accidents known as broken arrows. Now, maybe we have to have nuclear weapons, maybe we don't. Regardless, how many times we have come close to nuclear war and other nuclear weapons disasters is truly shocking. So, Jordan, how you doing tonight?
Um, after reading all these articles about nuclear war and all that stuff, I'm feeling pretty optimistic.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of pretty disturbing reading that we've been going through here recently. It's pretty shocking. I've known of a few, but I had no idea how many there were. So, if I may, I'm just going to jump right in, and I'll start with our. I guess there's so many. I think that's what's overwhelming to me is that there's so many different examples of when it happened, like throughout, since the 1950s, and it seemed like there've been so many, nuclear war near misses, and then so many, broken arrows or bent spears throughout the 50s and 60s, especially there were so many, but then even up until now, and just how many there are. But I want to focus just for a moment on one of the most disturbing ones. October 27th, 1962. This is during the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, when Russia had nuclear missiles in Cuba, and basically we had, there was a standoff basically between the United States and Russia over this. And October 27th is now commonly been referred to as Black Saturday, as many consider it one of the most dangerous days, the most dangerous day of the Cuban Missile Crisis, when both the U.S. and the Soviet Union came the closest probably to ever to having a nuclear war. It's multiple times on numerous occasions on this single day. So one of the first ones, in early morning of October 27th, the Soviets deployed nuclear cruise missiles in firing position to within 15 miles of the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay. The U.S. remains completely unaware. Next, on the same day, in the Soviet Union, Soviet strategic rocket forces fuel a series of nuclear-armed ICBMs that can be launched at a moment's notice. Wireless communication between divisions of the Soviet military and the strategic rocket forces are transferred to wartime frequencies, effectively signifying to the ICBM command post that war has begun. Now, meanwhile, an American U-2 spy plane enters Soviet airspace, attracting the attention of Soviet MiG interceptors, which are ordered to shoot the plane down. American fighter planes loaded with nuclear missiles are ordered to shoot at their own discretion, are sent to escort the U-2 plane back to American ground. This is all happening on the same day. And also on the same day, another U-2 spy plane is shot down over Cuba. American leaders had previously agreed that they would interpret the shooting of any of their planes as deliberate escalation from the Soviets and would automatically launch an attack in response. After the plane is shot down, the U.S. decides against attacking right away. It later comes to light that Khrushchev followed similar reasoning, ordering Soviet troops in Cuba not to shoot any American planes for fear of retaliation. The shooting of U-2 was actually ordered by a junior commander, acting on his own authority. Now, perhaps the most serious moment during October 27th is when 11 U.S. Navy destroyers and the aircraft carrier, the USS Randolph, cornered a nuclear-armed Soviet submarine near Cuba. The temperature on board the submarine rises high enough to temperatures that machinery starts to short circuit. The U.S. began hitting the submarine with small depth charges, and unable to contact Moscow, the submarine crew questions whether war had even begun. So, authorized to launch nuclear torpedoes without express permission from Moscow, 2 of the 3 submarine officers on board voted to launch. The 3rd officer, Vasily Arkhipov, refused to authorize the launch. Had any other officer been in Archipov's place, whether one who agreed with the 2 officers or one who was more easily pressured by the other officers to authorize the launch, nuclear war likely would have occurred. That's probably the closest we ever came. So had it not been for Arkhipov being in that position and refusing to launch the nuclear missile, very likely we could have had nuclear war that day. That's how close it came. So that's just to get you started on a few examples of how close we've been to nuclear war. Even just a few days later, November 2nd, 1962, this is a really strange one. Soviet intelligence officer Oleg Penkovsky, working as a double agent for the CIA and MI6, is caught in Moscow and arrested in October of 62. Penkovsky had been given a secret code to warn the U.S. and the U.K. if the Soviet Union was planning a nuclear attack, which consisted of 2 phone calls, 1 minute apart, uttering just 3 short breaths each time. On this day in November, Penkovsky calls the MI6 station in Moscow and gives the code. Now, the MI6 officer who received the call assumes that Penkovsky has been captured and does not warn London or Washington of an incoming attack, and thereby prevents a preemptive nuclear strike. That's from an article from Nuclear Close Calls from the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. And another article I read that this is actually from the CIA. After Penkovsky had been caught, he was shot as a traitor by the Soviets in 1963 for spying for the United States and for Britain. But there's, according to Benjamin Fisher in the International Journal of Intelligence and Counterintelligence, he posits the theory that Penkovsky hated Russia so much that he was essentially trying to start World War III, and that's why he was basically giving the code that nuclear war had started. That he had given that to the Russians to that he gave to the Americans to make them think that a Soviet attack was underway. So that's kind of a mystery as to what this guy was thinking, but it could be. Again, it's another situation where you have one individual, basically, right? Where before, right, on October 27th, it was Arkhipov who was countermanding the order to fire the nuclear torpedoes. This time it's an MI6 officer who's basically correctly assuming that he's been captured, but makes a decision not to pass on the information to avoid the danger of a nuclear attack or nuclear counterattack. So those are just a couple weird ones. August 1st, 1974, all right, in his last weeks in office during the Watergate crisis, Nixon is depressed, drinking heavily, and extremely unstable. U.S. Secretary of Defense James Schlesinger instructs the Joint Chiefs of Staff to run any emergency order the president may enact through him first. In Nixon's impaired state, Nixon could easily have ordered a nuclear launch. And this is a good place to point out that the president has sole authority, right, to launch a nuclear missile. There's no other steps in place to prevent that. If a president wants to launch a nuclear weapon, he or she can do it. There's no one else that he has to get approval from whatsoever. There are no checks on the president So if you have a president who is impaired or unhinged or insane or evil, this is a very serious danger. There's no like, right, all the different checks and balances we have, right, with our government is as I guess conscious of, we as paranoid as we've been about, as concerned as we've been about having checks against government power, right? And we're going to check the judiciary, we're going to check the legislature, we're going to check the power of the president. It seems like there should be a check on, having sole authority to launch a nuclear weapon. But again, that's another relic from the Cold War where, you knew you were only going to have a few minutes to make a decision, right? And they wanted to be able to make that decision quickly, I guess, as a deterrent, right? So that the whole concept behind mutually assured destruction, right? That they're not going to attack if they know we're going to attack with everything we've got, and do so immediately, right? But I think like a nuclear weapon, like a nuclear missile launch from Russia, takes about 30 minutes to get to the United States, but launch from like a submarine, it could be much closer. It only take 10 or 15 minutes to get here. That's not very much time to make a decision on whether you're actually being attacked or not, or if it's some kind of a mistake. Here's another one. November 9th, 1979, President Carter's National Security Advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, receives a phone call at 3 a.m. by his military assistant advisor, General William Odom, announcing that 2,200 Soviet missiles have been launched at the United States. President Carter has less than 10 minutes to order retaliation. Just as Brzezinski is about to call the president, Odom calls again to say it was a false alarm. Someone mistakenly placed military exercise tapes in the operational mission detection computer system. See, so that's, all it takes is like a human error, one human error, or mechanical, electronic, or computer error in the system for something like this to occur. Here's another one. June 3rd. And June 6, 1980, a faulty chip in American military computers causes warning displays to announce that multiple Soviet missiles have been launched towards the United States. On both days, B-52 bomber crews and missiles are nearly sent out in retaliation before personnel determine that the missile numbers the computers are displaying are illogical. Again, faulty computer chip. September 26, 1983, the Soviet AKO nuclear early warning system detects 5 nuclear-armed missiles launched from the United States, heading towards Moscow. The Soviet soldier on duty, Stanislav Petrov, suspects an AKO malfunction rather than a real attack and does not call for a retaliatory Soviet strike. Petrov is correct. AKO malfunctioned and a nuclear attack is averted. Again, here's like, I don't know, at least a third example of where you have one, it's left to one individual, kind of not even at that high a level, right? You're talking about this. He's a soldier basically. This other guy's a submarine commander. These are the people having to make these very split decisions with very little time under heavy pressure. And had they gone the other way, could have easily, resulted in a nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union, and nuclear devastation for the world. November 2nd through 11th, 1983, NATO enacts a 10-day exercise codenamed Able Archer 83, involving a hypothetical war with the Soviet bloc, which is set to end in the fictional launching of nuclear weapons. Moscow mistakes the exercise for real preparations and believes NATO is about to conduct a surprise nuclear attack. Nuclear-armed Soviet bombers in East Germany and Poland are placed on alert with pilots in the cockpit awaiting orders. Russia's 300 nuclear-armed ICBMs, its most powerful weapons, are stationed for immediate launch. Moscow contacts its Warsaw Pact allies, warning them that war is imminent and that Soviet ballistic submarines are assembling and firing positions off the coast of the U.S. The decisions of a couple of prudent individuals prevent conflict, namely a concerned KGB double agent who convinces the Reagan administration to reach out diplomatically to the USSR, and an American military intelligence officer who refuses to raise the American DEFCON alert level and further arouse Soviet suspicion. Tensions decrease, although Soviet forces remain on high alert until the exercise concludes on November 11th. And this is from both the Smithsonian Magazine and as well as a Nuclear Age Peace Foundation article, Nuclear Close Calls, from August 2017. So again, here's another one where we're on the cusp of nuclear war with Russia, and it just comes down to a couple of people, this time a KGB double agent and an American military intelligence officer, basically doing their part to stop. This is what they need to make a movie about. They may have made a movie about this. They should. It's truly horrifying. I'm going to take a break here for a second because I've already gone through a ton of examples already, and there's so many more. Fuck it. It's so fucked up. I don't normally like to swear on the show, but that's how bad this is. It's insane. It's how close we've come, how many times, and how unaware we are of it.
Well,
chime in here.
You could also argue for the fact. Most of these people that are doing this, like whether or not they're like high up officers, are in like fairly important positions. And so, you would think that the discretion of those officers would be like trusted, and that's why they were doing the job that they were up to in the first place. So just like if this guy hears about it, he'll know, like that sort of a thing, or like how likely. If the KGB double agent in the 60s that gave the 3 short breath phone calls, I forgot his name already. I remember it was Penkovsky. If that officer had already kind of been aware that he had most likely been captured in the last few days, and then he gets like that erroneous phone call, it would be suspicious, I feel like, the judiciousness of these people is, like absolutely commendable, but it's like,
absolutely. To be fair, they don't hire dummies. Like, there's
right guy for the job.
They do look for, in these types of roles, they're looking for very sharp people. Very very responsible, very loyal.
Well, that's how they get to where they are. Like it's how they get to be in the position in the first place of like, do I say this is nuclear or not? Like,
first of all, right, these people all have like top secret clearances, and those people, they got their act together. They don't make dumb mistakes, and they make a lot fewer than most people, and they know how to keep their mouths shut, right? They know a lot of sensitive stuff, and they have the self-discipline, right, to not talk about that stuff with anyone, friends, family, anybody, except people at work who need to know. That takes a unique skill, right? There's a lot of people that can't do that. Like, honestly, I couldn't do it. I've got a big mouth, dude.
Right.
That would be too hard. It'd be too hard.
I'd be the worst spy. Yeah.
There's so much you have to compartmentalize. Really, and be able to live with that. But anyway, that's going off on a tangent. But you're seeing here from these accounts of like real heroism from individuals.
Well, yeah, and just
stopping this shit from happening.
Yeah, and like how close it has gotten, and just the one the one in 1980 where it showed that the missile launch numbers were displayed were seen as being illogical, and one of the articles that I read about it like described how the missile count the computer chip malfunctioned, and it was like 2 missiles were launched, 200 missiles were launched. 7 missiles were launched, and it's like it
What's
kept
going
jumping
on?
back and forth between the number of, like, instead of just adding to a count going upward, it was just jumping around to seemingly random numbers in between a lot and a little. And so the officer was like, I mean, like, it's just like, it's, it's blinking. Somebody unplug it and plug it back in.
Yeah. Hit it. Just hit it on the side.
Yeah, good old
It'll
percussive maintenance.
it'll reboot.
That's that's where rebooting comes from, is just kicking it.
The boot.
Yeah, it's when you kick it again.
The second one does it.
Yeah, it's when you reboot.
Let's see. I think yeah, okay, so I think the last one we were talking about was the one after the coup, right? Was that the one? Or did we talk? I can't remember.
I think the last one that we talked about. No, the coup was the next one, because I think we closed on Able Archer.
Oh, okay. So, all right, August 19th through 21, 1991, an attempted coup in the Soviet Union causes President Mikhail Gorbachev to lose possession of his nuclear briefcase and the launch authorization codes that it contains after the case was confiscated by one of the coup leaders. The 2 other nuclear briefcases are also in possession of coup leaders until Gorbachev reclaims control. This is what they refer to in the Air Force as an empty quiver, when a nuclear weapon or nuclear device or warhead is stolen. That's an empty quiver. So
bummer is what it is.
That's like, yeah, I mean, that's we don't normally think of that, do we? Like, we think of, most of the time it's a mistake, right, of like a computer malfunction. We think of like a missile launch happening on accident somehow, but yeah, somebody just, you don't normally think of someone stealing the nuclear briefcase, getting a hold of it. You tend to think, well, that's going to be really secure. Nobody's going to be able to get to that. Right? But
right. But I mean, like, if it was a coup, I mean, like, I'm not well learned in that era of history, so I mean, I couldn't tell you who the coup participants were, but they were probably people close enough to them that they were able to get to it, But yeah, getting all 3 of them.
They had it. They was in their possession.
Yeah, but getting all 3 of them is just like, dang, all 3, really?
Like, they could have, potentially launched nuclear weapons for the time that they had them.
Yeah, true. I mean, like, technically, but I mean, I don't know about the, like, ability to necessarily, like, could they give, like, exact coordinates? Like, I want you to send this many nukes to this location, and, like, or did they have, like, different codes for, like, different, press 4 for
right?
every major city on the East Coast, press 5 for, California,
Right. January 25, 1995, Russian early warning radar detects a scientific rocket launch off the coast of Norway, which the U.S. had informed Russia about beforehand. But Russia mistakenly identifies as an American submarine-launched ballistic missile. Russian nuclear forces jumped to full alert, with President Boris Yeltsin retrieving the nuclear launch codes and preparing for a retaliatory launch. Russian satellites monitoring American missile fields prove that the missile is not headed for Russia, and a strike is called off. Right? And so that was, and yeah, so what happened there was the United States had notified Russia, but someone had just forgotten to pass that information along to the next. Someone on Russia's side just failed to pass that information along to the next person, and in the information chain, and so they weren't aware. The Russian military wasn't aware of this scientific rocket launch at all, even though they should have been. So that's just human error, human miscommunication. So yeah, we've talked. Those are some of the close calls, some of the close nuclear. There were others, of course. Yeah, I did want to mention this other one up here. This is going back actually to November 5, 1956. False alarm of a Soviet attack. British and French forces are attacking Egypt over the Suez Canal, and the Soviet government proposes to the U.S. that they combine non-nuclear forces to halt the attack. While considering this option, U.S. Defense Forces receive word of what seems to be a Soviet invasion. Unidentified aircraft are flying over Turkey. Soviet MiGs are flying over Syria. A British bomber has been shot down over Syria, and the Soviet fleet is moving through the Dardanelles and northwestern Turkey. The American military fears that this might trigger a NATO nuclear strike against Soviet Union. So there were like 4 signs of invasion, but all 4 signs of this invasion were later disproven to be totally unrelated. Turned out to be unrelated events. The unidentified aircraft were actually a flight of Swans. The MiGs were a routine Air Force escort for the Syrian president as he returned from Moscow. The British bomber was forced down for mechanical reasons, and the Soviet fleet was engaging in routine exercises. So that's this sort of crazy instance where you've got just a confluence of different things happening that appear to be an invasion, but none of them are, right? And 4 different factors that seem to, indicate an invasion is underway, but none of those 4 indicators, they're all false. Right? This is why we need the cooler heads, right? Why we need, why being on a hair trigger alert is so dangerous, right? We need to be able to take the time and make sure that, especially when you're talking about nuclear weapons, right? Because they're so destructive. Bad enough, right? To use any weapon, right? But a nuclear weapon is it's like you can't take that back. You can't take any of them back, but once you use a nuclear weapon, you've changed the game. Considerably.
Absolutely. I mean, like that's kind of like the literal end all. Like,
yeah, yes, to be quite literally.
I mean, and even if it's not enough to cause like a nuclear winter, I mean, like significant portions of big places are going to be very severely impacted for a long time, and I mean,
yeah,
I mean. That's, I mean, even if it doesn't like quote unquote end the world, it's going to be the end of the world for hundreds of millions of people, if not, more, depending on, how many sides, manage to get how many nukes away.
Well, according to the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, in their article, Nowhere to Hide, How a Nuclear War Would Kill You and Almost Everyone Else, from October of 2022, they said in a nuclear war, hundreds or thousands of detonations would occur within minutes of each other. So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about billions being killed.
I mean,
maybe not everyone gets killed, but and I believe, there's going to be a lot killed within the first day. If not billions immediately, but then over the course of
the dust cloud,
winter, the famine, the starvation that will occur, that's probably where most of the deaths will actually occur from that. What else did they say? They said one detonation of a modern day 300 kiloton nuclear warhead, that is a warhead nearly 10 times the power of the bombs used at Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined, on a city like New York, would lead to over 1 million people dead and about twice as many people with serious injuries in the first 24 hours after the explosion. And that's just from one. And that's just after the first day.
Yeah,
it
well, I
would be
mean,
almost
300 kiloton. I mean, like I've heard about, nuclear weapons in like the megaton range. So I mean, like, how powerful is one of those, and like, how many of those are they launching at a time versus how many of the really big ones are they launching at a time?
right. Yeah, I mean
Which
it's
is just
pretty.
all like dumb statistics. It's semantics, is what it is. Like, I mean, but just like the fact of the matter is that it would be immensely destructive, world changing, like catastrophic event for at least like the hemisphere that it occurred in, if not like far far more than that.
Well,
And it's
yeah.
something that we should avoid. And
So
here are times, yeah, where like we almost didn't avoid it.
so according to again the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists in that same article, a global all-out nuclear war between the United States and Russia, with over 4,100 kiloton nuclear warheads, would lead at minimum to 360 million quick deaths. Those are the deaths that happen basically immediately, like within the first day. That's about 30 million people more than the entire U.S. population. And that's just like immediately, like right out of the gate, 360 million killed if you have like a full out nuclear war between the U.S. and Russia. But then it's going to,
Well, is that
after
like
that, it's
spread
just
out
going to get
between the
worse.
two countries, or?
Well, that's the thing, right? It's not like that radiation will be limited to just Russia and the United States.
Well, yeah, but no, I mean, like, as far as like the quick dead, is it going to be like 350 million, like, or 360 million, like per country, or just like in the
Total.
first 24 hours total, like at least that
Yeah.
many, like, boom, dead? Yeah, that.
Right. But they estimate that, um,
Oh yeah, and then
what else
like
do they
after
say?
that, the catastrophic crop failure and the logistical like failure and
Going to
like.
affect global climatic changes, radioactive contamination, societal collapse virtually everywhere.
Well,
Uh,
I mean, like the all the necessary services are going to go down like pretty much permanently, you know,
yeah.
and then we'll see how prepared we really are.
So
Um,
they estimated 2 years after any nuclear war, small or large, famine alone could be as
yeah,
deadly as the hundreds of bomb blasts involved in the war itself. So the famine could be just from that could be just as bad, if not worse.
yeah, so we can double that to, like what's that? So 720 million, so three-quarters of a billion people so far in a year.
I mean, and that I mean the quick death. That's just like immediately.
Yeah.
But that's I mean that's like after the first day. That's I mean versus there's going to be a lot more deaths. Uh, over the coming
Yeah,
weeks,
yeah,
months,
over
and
the
years.
course of it. Yeah.
Whether you're talking about from radiation or famine or all the other things that happen when you have nuclear devastation.
Yeah, just yeah,
So
well, yeah, just like a complete and utter collapse where yeah, it would yeah,
and
yeah, it would obviously yeah, it would effectively end the world in those parts of the world, if not
so
other parts of the world.
so and yeah, estimates vary on how many nukes there still are. Anywhere between, depending on which sources you're looking at, anywhere between 8,000 and 13,000 nuclear weapons worldwide, with obviously the United States and Russia having most of them. I think Russia has about 6,000. U.S. has about 5,500. But there's 9 countries, right, that have them. Obviously, U.S. and Russia, but also Israel, Pakistan, India, France, UK, China, and North Korea. So 9 countries have them, and I believe only the United States and Russia have nuclear weapons on high alert, meaning that the warheads are on the missile, so that they can be launched within a matter of minutes.
And then what's the travel time there? Like from like I mean from versus like land to a target, like say in the middle of
If we're trying to hit
Europe.
somewhere in Russia, maybe somewhere around half an hour, depending on what part.
Okay.
from the United States if we're trying to hit if we were to try and attack them or vice versa from a submarine, depending on when the sub is, it could be as little as 10 to 15 minutes. And so that means, whenever, so somebody launches a nuclear weapon, the president or premier, the prime minister of Russia has to you got 10 minutes to make a decision, right? On what you're going to do. If you're going to confirm, right? Are you going to wait?
Yeah.
You're going to be a lunatic and just launch off right away.
Right. Yeah.
It's not much time.
It's like, it's like, okay, here is this news and a cell phone. Go.
Right. And there's so many, right?
It's like beep, boop, 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 boop. Hey, mom.
Right. Was that like what is that show? You have like
like Who Wants to
call
Be a
somebody?
Millionaire? The Lifeline. Yeah.
You have to call. You have one call. You can call somebody for help. Like
Exactly.
I got 7 minutes left. They're saying nuclear missiles headed this way.
I need to call my bartender.
He's never steered me wrong.
Right.
He'll have the answer. But I mean, there's so many factors to consider there, right? Because as we've already seen, there's so many different types of errors that can come into play, even with all of their safety precautions, which there are many, many, many. It's no system is perfect, and humans are susceptible to human error. We all are. So, I mean, that's and just the ease of misinterpreting, right, signals. I mean, we all know this. I mean, we know this from dating. Right?
Yeah, I mean, like,
from relationships
exactly line up, but I mean, like, I feel like I understand that, like, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, but this, how many times they misinterpreted something like a test as an attack, right? And
yeah,
fortunately, they confirmed that, right? That they stopped and said, no, wait, let's double check this first before we strike.
Yeah, it's just like, something smells fishy, like something about this isn't right, I mean, because, I mean, so many circumstances of it seem to have been where it was like, like one missile or like a handful of missiles or something. Or hilariously, a varying number of missiles, which is just never not going to be my favorite one. But it was never like, it didn't look right, like, why would they launch 5 missiles at us? It's just like, what I mean, like, what is that going to do? If they were going to launch missiles at us, there should at least be like a couple for every military base.
Yeah.
Like,
why only 5? Why not? Yeah.
Like why not 75? Yeah. Why not 1,000? Right. Like, I mean.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it's such a monumental decision. There's the decision to engage in a nuclear war. And I mean, as we can see, this on multiple occasions has come down to the decision of one person, not the president, not the leader of a country, but like an officer on a submarine, right? Or another officer, a military officer, with authority to, launch missiles. Or you've got these other, a military intelligence officer and a KGB double agent.
It's like 2 of the same thing, right?
Working, the system to stop a nuclear war from happening. It's and then you have somebody like the one guy, the double agent that we had, that it almost appears like he tried to start a nuclear war.
Right.
So. Yeah, he's the one oddball. All these others are
well, I mean, like he probably figured that Moscow would be the first place hit, and they'd all die in that, rather than the weeks or maybe months of torture he was about to endure for being caught being a double agent. So
yeah, I mean that's the thing is, All right, so, and I don't want to go down this tangent for too long, but what are you laughing? What the hell is that for? The tangent? Is that what it
Yeah,
is?
sorry.
You're laughing at? Damn it. But that, I mean, spies are not hired because they're nice people, right? I think I've used this before. What was it? And I read it from some CIA person had said it, who was in operations. It said, if when you're going to go hunting for rats, it helps to have people with whiskers and sharp teeth and claws. That you kind of need to have rats to go after rats.
Well,
The people that
that's
you
fair.
need to go after pieces of shit are not necessarily going to be squeaky clean, right? They're gonna do. These people are gonna do whatever it takes. They're of that nature. They're the I will do whatever it takes to get this done nature.
Right, yeah, and hopefully
period.
nobody catches me. Right, yeah.
Right. This is my job, and well too also, right? Yeah, I mean a lot of these, people are fucking crazy too. Excuse me. Just like you can have lunatics, right? Which may have been what this Russian double agent that had been working for the U.S. and MI6 was. That he may have just been kind of like a bit of an ideological Looney Tune who didn't care what happened to anyone else. Perhaps a bit of a sociopath. All right, I'm speculating wildly here. I don't know that's true, but
Yeah.
I don't know that's true. But this did happen, right? He did, for whatever reason, Oleg Penkovsky did pass, right, the code to communicate that the Soviet Union was planning a nuclear attack against the West. He passed that along to the UK, right? He gave that message, that code, which consisted of 2 phone calls 1 minute apart, uttering just 3 short breaths each time. He did that, right? And it was only because the MI6 officer who received those calls assumed correctly that Penkovsky had been captured and chose not to warn London or Washington of an incoming attack, right? Because he knew what that meant, right?
Yeah,
he
so
made that decision.
Why did he do that? Like, why would he have done that?
Did the MI6 officer know that that Penkovsky was, had a screw loose, right?
Well, right, yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I mean, just like okay, this guy was always, right, yeah, there are all sorts of things to consider, and I'm sure, that's why, he considered them all and decided that we weren't probably about to go to war. So,
or it's like he wants to get. I mean, sometimes we do employ sociopaths on our behalf, right? As all intelligence agencies do, to do, the dirty work of intelligence gathering and special operations, right? So we employ those people, but sometimes like their darker motives can take hold, and it may have just been that he didn't give a shit who else died as long as he got even with the Russians that got him.
Right. Yeah.
It does sound like he deeply hated Russia, and he deeply hated the Soviets. He did not say Russia, but he hated the Soviets and bitter. And so how true is this? I don't know, but I think there is some credibility to it. Regardless of what that truth is, it is true that Penkovsky, for whatever reason Penkovsky he did pass the code for a nuclear attack occurring against the United States and the UK to his contact at MI6. And it was only because the MI6 officer didn't pass that information along that nuclear war was avoided.
And that feels like that could have been a particularly close one, just because of the cloak and dagger nature of that sort of operation. I mean, if they have codes like that, I mean, how seriously how seriously did they take this guy in the first place? How much valuable information had he given them? I mean, these are all things that
I'll tell you what, you can go. This is interesting, and you can debate this one all over the place. But the CIA has, you can, they have a page on him. They have information you can go to about him, and they on his they talk about how he served for many years helping U.S. intelligence. And they have all types of files on Penkovsky and how he helped U.S. intelligence. So I'm not saying he didn't, right? And I'm not saying he was a scumbag, although it sounds like I'm suggesting it the way I was speculating. But yeah, you can go to like the CIA reading room. It's online. It's a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
Reading room where all the stuff they've released through FOIA releases you can read, and they have a lot of stuff on the different assignments and operations that he worked on, and how he did work for the CIA and MI6, working for U.S. intelligence. But for whatever reason, he made that call and passed on the code. I mean, we should do a show just on that, or you could do a movie on that, right? I mean, that's a hell of a story. Write a book on that. And I'm sure someone has. But you see, like, how many times it's come so close, and that it's right. You're talking about the power of nuclear weapons, the devastating, insanely devastating power of nuclear weapons, and that we have these intricate systems with, multiple, all types of safety checks and protocols in place. And still so often it comes down to like one person, saying no, disobeying an order, or saying, wait a minute, one person making the right judgment call, And it's like, yes, this is why critical thinking skills are important, kids. This is why critical thinking skills matter. It's really not about like passing a multiple choice quiz. That's not what it's about. It's about making the right call when it really matters.
Well, yeah, I mean, like some of those multiple choice questions are pretty hard, man. Like,
oh yeah. Truly. I mean, they can, they throw those trick questions at you. You can, make it a little challenging. Okay. All right. So anyway,
yes.
Spend enough time on that. Let us venture to our last little portion here, talking about some examples of the broken arrows and bent spears. So these are examples where there wasn't a risk of nuclear war between the United States and Russia. That was not on the table. But there was some kind of either significant incident with a nuclear weapon, a bent spear, or an accident with a nuclear weapon or warhead or nuclear device, a broken arrow. So I'm just going to go through some of these. November 10th, 1950, a B-50 bomber experiencing mechanical failure dropped its Mark IV atomic bomb over Quebec. Its conventional explosives detonated when it landed in a river, scattering nearly 100 pounds of uranium. Oh,
gee, okay.
Oops. So yeah, so a little bit of cleanup there.
Yeah, get the big mop.
So some uranium. March 10th, 1956, a B-47 carrying two types of nuclear capsules from Florida to a base overseas loses contact over the Mediterranean and is never found. So they're just gone. So presumably right there at the bottom of the ocean somewhere, never to be seen from again.
I'm not certain what a nuclear capsule is. I'm assuming it's like the fissile material,
that's the warhead.
Okay.
So July 27, 1956, at a U.S. base in the UK, B-47 bomber skids off the runway on landing and rips into a storage igloo containing Mark 6 atomic bombs before exploding. The bombs do not detonate. Whew! Plane just crashes in to the storage igloo with the bombs in there. Fortunately, they didn't detonate. Thank goodness. May 22nd, 1957, a B-36 aircraft jettisons an unmarked Mark 17 10-megaton hydrogen bomb over Albuquerque, New Mexico. The thermonuclear device weighing 42,000 pounds was being transported from Biggs Airfield in Texas to Kirtland Air Force Base just miles south of Albuquerque. Accounts of what caused the incident vary, but one account suggests that a crew member in the bomb bay was jolted by sudden turbulence. He grabbed hold of the manual bomb release lever to steady himself, which caused the weapon to fall through the closed bomb bay doors and plummet to earth. Now, that's
Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, who knows? That's just one version. We don't really know exactly what happened. It could have been, but that's one version.
Something that may have happened.
Who knows what the hell was going on? But regardless, the bomb fell out of the plane to earth. The nuclear chain reaction necessary to set off the bomb, however, did not occur because the bomb's fissionable plutonium component was stored separately aboard the aircraft, which is a good safety precaution, right? That's they keep the warhead separate from them, typically when they're traveling. However, the device's conventional explosives did detonate, right? There's the TNT that's there to detonate the warhead, right? That did go off, and that left a crater 12 feet deep and 25 feet wide on an uninhabited area of land owned by the University of New Mexico. So I think that killed a cow. They got lucky, right? But yeah, so again, you see, like, the safety protocols in place prevented, had they not followed that safety protocol and had the warhead on the bomb, or let's say the warhead, but they had the capsule on, then you could have had a hydrogen bomb go off. So I mean, and so here's another one. 1958, January 31st, a B-47 bomber armed with Mark 36 hydrogen bomb on a strategic air command base in Morocco blows a tire on the runway, which starts a fire that gradually engulfs the plane. The explosives in the bomb burn but do not detonate, melting the plane and bomb into an 8,000-pound block of radioactive metal.
Okay, that's that.
And there's a lot of those. That's a lot of what we see, especially in the 50s and 60s, when the Cold War was really in full fury. And also the early days, right, where really both sides were ramping up their militaries and their air forces. Major arms race going on, major military mobilization on both sides. But you see a lot of mistakes happening too, right? Because there is so much activity, right? That they're keeping bombers in the air 24 hours a day with nuclear weapons ready to strike at any time. So it's almost like they're constantly they're not literally on high alert status, but there was this kind of sense during the Cold War, especially in those early days, certainly from when you read about it.
Well, didn't they
paranoia?
Didn't Reagan have a policy at one point, or I don't know if it was specifically Reagan, but during the Cold War, they have a policy where they had so many B-52s either in the air ready to drop bombs so fast, or within a certain amount of time, or on the runway prepped and ready to go at all times or something like that. I mean, wasn't that a big part of the escalation of the arms race and stuff?
Yeah, I don't know that much about it, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah. I'm sure that's true to some degree, but I don't I'm not well versed enough on those strategies can change from from administration to administration. They can sort of change some of their policies and procedures. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't change, but there are other things that do, and it also can depend on what they decide within an agency, right? As far as what works well for the agency, on which processes work best, and that sort of thing. But here's another one. March 11th, 1958, a B-47 bomber accidentally drops a Mark 6 atomic bomb into a family's backyard in Mars Bluff, South Carolina. The nuclear core of the bomb is stored elsewhere in the plane and is therefore not dropped. Same deal again.
Yeah.
As what happened.
Yeah, but it's still loaded with tons of high explosives.
Yeah, it's got the TNT, which blew it's like a 24-foot deep, 50-foot wide crater in their backyard.
Well, I mean,
destroyed their home.
Destroyed the house. I mean, a crater that size. I mean, that's bigger than if you could fill your whole house up with natural gas and it might leave a crater that size.
Yeah.
But it might not.
But they had a farm. So it was a farm, right? So it when I say yard, it was in the back. It was in their property.
Okay, and then the shockwave probably blew the house down.
Destroyed their farmhouse and injured all 6 of their family members. But yeah. I mean, they're lucky that they're lucky to be alive. They're lucky they lived. Hopefully, they weren't harmed too badly. But yeah, I mean, that's just just accidents, right? Something breaks loose, like somebody accidentally hits the wrong lever. November 4th, 1958, a B-47 bomber carrying a Mark 39 hydrogen bomb crashes into a field near Abilene, Texas. Conventional explosives in the bomb detonate, but the nuclear core does not. So, yeah. And so it seems like, that's what happens a lot of the time is the bomb or something gets dropped, right? And the bomb explodes, right? And makes a crater, right? But since the nuclear core is not attached, you don't have a nuclear explosion. So, I mean, obviously that's a good safety protocol that's prevented a lot of nuclear explosions from happening. January 24th, 1961, Goldsboro, North Carolina. This is a big one. A nuclear armed bomber flying over North Carolina loses a wing, dropping 2 nuclear bombs into Goldsboro, North Carolina. One of the bombs breaks apart on impact due to a failed parachute. Although the nuclear core does not detonate, the other bomb lands unharmed, but 5 of its 6 safety devices fail. A nuclear explosion was avoided by the slightest margin of chance, as Defense Secretary Robert McNamara described it. So it had 6 safety devices within in the nuclear bombs, and 5 of them failed. So we were just down to the last safety device. I mean, we're lucky they got the 6 model, apparently. All those things have to arm themselves, or the impact of the explosion caused those things to trip even though they weren't supposed to, or you got to wonder what failed about them. I'm just I'm always curious about that, those minutia of details, but right.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Well, it's just scary because it's scary because there's so many, right? There's so many,
and the list goes on and on and on. You just got to 1961, and this goes clear into pretty much present day. And every single one of them was just very I feel more near being a disaster than any of these other nuclear close calls, because the human error had already occurred. The more espionage or political examples of this almost happening, winds up being due to the creative ingenuity of a human, whereas this is all where the humans fail. The bomb gets dropped in all of these circumstances and it just doesn't go off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like it's disturbing, but it's also the flip side of it too is as close as we've come, as many mistakes have been made. There've also been a lot of safety protocols in place that, even though mistakes were made, prevented the ultimate disaster from happening.
Well, right.
It gives credit to those procedures and people following those procedures that there's a reason, right? You're not just
Such
doing
as
this shit.
the slightest margin of chance. Like, I mean, there have been there have been several times where it's still, I mean, like whether or not it would have started a war, I mean, like, it still would have been, an atomic explosion, at this military base, or, in North Carolina, or, over Spain, I mean,
Yeah, it's not going to lead to a nuclear war between us and Russia, but it's going to be like a huge section of North Carolina or New Mexico gets vaporized. Yeah. And okay, so during the Cold War, I think in the 80s, and again here estimates vary on what the numbers were, but during the peak in the 80s, when we had the most nukes worldwide, somewhere between 60 and 70,000, roughly, depending on which sources you're going with. But that's, now we're down to like somewhere between 8,000 and 13,000. So that's a huge decrease. That's encouraging. That is progress. That is a result of, our different, missile reduction treaties. Biden just renewed the START treaty. So that's a good thing, to continue to reduce the number of nuclear weapons we have between us and Russia. But I mean, it's, as long as we have them, it's a danger, right? It's just that threat, as long as they exist, the potential for these types of things can happen. So anyway, there's a ton more of these. It just, I can't go on and on because we could go on all night. It's just, it's too many. But I did want to at least mention, blah, 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 blah. This one here, a missile repairman, September 8th, 1980.
Oh yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah. A missile repairman doing routine maintenance on the Titan II ICBM silo in Damascus, Arkansas, drops a wrench from the repair platform, which falls 70 feet and pierces the side of a missile, causing thousands of gallons of highly flammable rocket fuel to pour into the silo. The Titan II ICBM was the largest missile that the U.S. ever built, about the size of a 10-story building, and was mounted with the most powerful nuclear warhead the U.S. had ever put on a missile. The fuel explodes, killing an airman, and catapults the warhead out of the silo. However, its safety mechanisms performed correctly, and the warhead does not detonate. So again, because of safety mechanisms, total disaster was averted, but you still have, the largest missile ever built, exploding and killing an airman.
It's not that funny. Yeah, but no, I mean, like, it's I mean, for what it was intended for, I mean, like, it's it's kill death ratio isn't looking
dropping
great.
a wrench.
Yeah, well, to be fair though, like I remember reading about that in greater detail too, and that wrench was like an 8-pound socket. So I mean, like, if you dropped an 8-pound piece of metal 70 feet and it landed on something sensitive, I could see it like causing quite a great deal of damage.
Yeah, I mean, this is serious work. These are big tools, right? It's the biggest missile. This is the biggest rocket ever made, and you're working on it. Yeah, so I mean, this is dangerous stuff. And yeah, I don't mean to make light of it. This guy who dropped a wrench. Yeah, and the airman who died. I mean, that's a horrible thing. But that just highlights the nature of this is dangerous work. I mean, that's the nature of like a lot of work, military or otherwise. There's a lot of jobs that are dangerous, right? If you're a lineman, if you're freaking washing windows on a building, right? If you're fishing on a if you're fishing on a boat in Alaska, there's plenty of jobs that like your life's on the line every day, and these are those kind of jobs. You can make one mistake and it's you
That's that. Yeah.
blow up a missile or start a nuclear war. Yeah, I mean,
Had your coffee.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of pressure. These people, I mean, have a lot of respect for the serious decisions and responsibility that these people in the military have to that have to deal with these types of issues. I mean, very little warning, lots of pressure.
Oh yeah, it would be unimaginable.
The future of humanity, right? Hanging on you making the right decision. So obviously, as there's tons more of these.
Yeah, I really hope that guy doesn't have his affairs in order and is planning on living like another 50 or so years.
Which guy?
Whoever is in control of making that decision.
Oh, this right. Yeah, he wants to live a long time, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, come on.
So there's a ton of other. I'm not going to belabor it because there have been so many other instances, but there's lots of information online that people can go to look up, information about the threats of nuclear weapons. And actually, the Department of Defense released a lot of information about different broken arrows and different types of nuclear accidents that have occurred about between 1950 and 1980, and it was released. And I got it through PBS. They had it available through their website, and that was from Broken Arrows. How many nuclear accidents have we had? And anyway, so this was released. I'm looking for the date, but yeah, it's that's the article from PBS, and you can actually download the. You go to that article and read about that. But yeah, it's a Department of Defense narrative summaries of accidents involving U.S. nuclear weapons, 1950 to 1980, and it's a PDF that's available through FOIA through FOIA, so it's available to the public, and it's 43 pages, but it has a lot of this information that we were talking about, and that's from the Department of Defense. So right, straight from the horse's mouth. But so obviously, as we've discussed, there's a lot of risks that come with having nuclear weapons. Lots of different bad things that can happen. Right? Whether through all different types of accidents, or you could have a crazy president who decides to launch one, and we have no checks in place to stop it. Lots of false alarms that have occurred, whether through human error, miscommunications, or electronic or computer malfunctions. These systems are very complex, and because they're complex systems, there's a lot of different things that can go wrong and do. Sometimes multiple things at once. And also the threat of espionage, whether that be through cyber attacks, sabotage, or theft. Right? Again, when we talk about theft, we're talking about the stealing of nuclear weapons, an enemy stealing our nuclear weapons, or a terrorist stealing nuclear weapons to use, possibly against us. That's the empty quiver. Empty quiver is seizure or theft of a functioning nuclear weapon. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this, a fated giant is a Department of Defense term for an accident involving a nuclear reactor or other type of radiological accident. That's a fated giant.
So for instance, like a plant meltdown, like 3 Mile Island, or
yeah, like that, or like a Fukushima. Yeah.
Okay, so even if it isn't on domestic soil, any sort of reactor accident, whether it's ours or theirs, is considered a fated giant.
I don't know. I mean, all right. So if you're going to be technically accurate, I don't know they're probably
Oh
just
no, yeah,
referring
no. I was just
to
I'm
our
splitting
own.
hairs, but I was curious.
Yeah. I think to be technically correct, yeah, like it's probably just referring to our own.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly Russia has their own broken arrows, and other countries have theirs. Um, we know about some of them. There's a lot, I'm sure there's a lot more we don't know about. But so the Pentagon has acknowledged 32 broken arrows, meaning accidents involving nuclear weapons. That's what the Department of Defense has
Acknowledges, yeah.
right? But Eric Schlosser, the author of Command and Control, Nuclear Weapons, the Damascus Accident, and the Illusion of Safety, which we just mentioned earlier, he explains in his book why the actual number of broken arrows is probably in the hundreds, not 32, but in the hundreds. And that's from the article from the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, Near Misses, Close Calls, and Early Warnings, from May 9th of 2023. So just to mention again, that book by Eric Schlosser, Command and Control, Nuclear Weapons, the Damascus Accident, and the Illusion of Safety. He's alleging that, the broken arrows there's a lot more we just don't know about. Right. We know about what they told us about.
Well, right, yeah.
But there's all the other stuff they haven't told us.
Well, no kidding, yeah. No, I can't
and all
imagine.
the stuff that the other countries haven't told us, which is the nature of, military.
Yeah, I've heard different, various statistics, or not statistics, but like just like various like different estimates of like how many nuclear warheads the Soviet Union had at one point, and like how many they have now, and like how many are just kind of like unaccounted for, like even like as far as like missing from like what we like know they had, or what they pretty deplendably had. Yeah. And it's like,
yeah,
I don't remember any like precise numbers, and I don't even know if that's like a real thing anymore, or something that's been debunked. I read about it years ago, but
how much can we trust, right?
Yeah, like
Russia has their nuclear stockpile well in hand.
Well, right, and and then like and like who has it and why haven't they used it yet? Like I feel like by now, like in the climate that it's been in different parts of the world, like I mean, like some nutcase, like if like some crazy got a hold of one of those things, like he would have tried to use it by now, and they would have figured out that somebody had like this radioactive material, or just like, oh, that that big ass bomb that went off there, like.
Yeah. Well, I think we make it, I think they're making it hard to get a hold of.
Well, right. Well, yeah. I mean, like that's the entire point. But I mean, like if on one hand I'm reading that this many, and it was like in the hundreds of missiles or warheads that are missing from like the Soviet stockpile, versus or like unaccounted for, versus how many have gone off,
Yeah. Well, we've got some missing too.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Most likely they're at the bottom of the ocean somewhere, but
well, right, and like we can account for
where
those are. I mean, like just because we don't know where they are doesn't mean we don't know where they are. I mean, like
I mean, there's a chance, right, that they could have been retrieved, but by who, right? If they're retrieved, they probably got retrieved by Russia, and they already have nukes, so.
Yeah, right? And at what cost?
ISIS isn't going to retrieve our nukes from the bottom of the ocean, right? They don't have the goods for that, right? Maybe Russia could do it, but they don't need to.
Well, I mean, like England or France or China could, I mean,
they don't need to either.
Exactly. Yeah. So
honestly, I think the reason nobody's using them is because we're going to know who did it.
Right.
They're not going to like fool anyone.
And that is really like the no, like
they're gonna know where it came from, and then that's it for you and your people. You're wiped off the face of the earth, right?
That's true.
Along with a lot of other people.
No, I mean, like, that's, I mean, like, that is the kick in the balls that gets you kicked right back in the balls way harder.
Right. So, okay. Thankfully, we've gone from somewhere between 60 and 70,000 nuclear weapons in the 80s when I was a kid to somewhere between 8 and 13,000 now. That's awesome. The problem is we got 9 countries that have them, and you know, there's, you know, there's no apparent end in sight to the proliferation, right? The United States over the next 30 years is planning on spending $1.7 trillion to redo its entire nuclear arsenal. 1.7 trillion over the next 3 decades. That's a lot of money to keep the nuclear weapons going.
Yeah, and I assume that they'll be like responsibly disposing of all the waste and like trying to properly recycle all the old parts into like things that they can use. Yeah,
I mean that's a whole other podcast right there. That's a whole other right. All the nuclear. There's when you're talking nuclear, there's multiple issues. There's baked into it, whether you're talking about nuclear weapons or nuclear waste, right, or all the different issues with like nuclear reactors and nuclear power.
Just where do you let it be radioactive?
Where is it okay? Where is it okay to store radioactive material for 50,000 years?
Yeah.
Well, that's what bothers me. All right, because we've got that nuclear site up in Hanford, in Washington, which is just not that far away, really, from we're in Portland. When you think of, it's near the Columbia River, right? It's like if that, if waste were to, and they even had some problems not that many years, maybe 5 or 6 years back, I think, at Hanford with some nuclear waste leaking out of some of its containers, and they had to do a serious cleanup out there. Less than 10 years ago, this happened. And because I was out here and I remember thinking, if that got into the water table, that gets into the Columbia River. That's the kind of, that's the, nightmare stuff you don't want to have happen. And so that's part of the reason we're doing this show, right? Is just to kind of bring awareness. Because nobody thinks about this, right? We're all busy. We're all living our lives, trying to do 100 things. And
here's one more thing to be afraid of.
Yeah, but you're right. But this is kind of important. It is important to know about the thing that might end the planet. One of those things and it's like everybody's probably at this point, and understandably so, getting like devastation fatigue, right? Tired of hearing about the threats of climate change. Tired of hearing about the threats of nuclear war or pandemics. Or an asteroid or whatever, right? Let alone, inequality and that kind of stuff, poverty, social justice, all the things that, I'm always advocating for. And, I certainly, people sometimes can get tired of hearing it. They're just like, dude, I just want to relax, I just want to hang out and play video games. I mean, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, but it is every human's responsibility to be informed about matters of import, right? That's just part of your responsibility as a human. If you want to make decisions in the modern world, make decisions not like, a caveman, right? Make good decisions to help, get through life and, have a good life, right? Perpetuate the species, carry on your bloodline, take good care of your family, have a pleasant life, help other people, make life pleasant for others so they can help do the same for you. But yeah, it's like this is a major problem, especially when you think of like, you got countries like China and Russia where they're not democratic. I mean, we got our problems, but we still, at least for the time being, have a functioning democracy. Imperfect as it may be, people, and threatened, unfortunately, tragically, by too many from inside, the legitimacy of our vote has been threatened, repeatedly. That too is a dire threat, right? That's, the threat to democracy, the threat of fascism. Yeah, there's a lot of threats. But that is the state of life, right? To ignore a threat is to be foolish, and is to make yourself unnecessarily vulnerable to the winds of of life. We have to stay alert of the different things going on. So anyway, here are 5 proposed solutions to mitigate these different dangers from nuclear weapons. And these are brought to us, these are for your consideration. They are brought to us from the organization Back from the Brink, which you can go to at preventnuclearwar.org, and also propose the same 5 solutions proposed by the Union of Concerned Scientists. You can go to their website as well. And they're going into more detail about these proposed solutions. But they got 5 general solutions for how to address the threats of nuclear war occurring. Their first one is pursuing global elimination, right? Pursuing a verifiable agreement between nuclear arms countries that have nuclear weapons, to eliminate their nuclear arsenals. That's, whatever it takes to work towards that. And the Union of Concerned Scientists was very happy about Biden renewing the START treaty with Russia. They said that was great. It's a good first step. They suggest that Biden and the U.S. follow that up with a diplomacy first approach with North Korea, right? And rejoining the Iran deal, which limits Iran's capacity to produce weapons grade uranium. That's the deal that Trump, that Obama made with Iran to get them to stop developing weapons grade uranium, and then Trump took us out of that. So they recommend us rejoining the Iran deal. I support that as well. And I also recommend establishing dialogue with China on ways to increase security for our countries while also avoiding an arms race. Because we have been seeing in recent years, right, the Chinese military has been building up its arsenal and its military, developing hypersonic weapons. Russia doing the same. Also, China, building these small islands in the South Pacific, man-made sort of little atolls / military installations to expand their reach across the South Pacific. So, working, I suggest certainly taking less of a hostile, having a more conciliatory, less aggressive posture against China. There's a lot of anti-China rhetoric, and certainly from our country, and certainly they deserve, as does Russia, their criticism for being anti-democratic. A lot of human rights abuses there. They certainly have plenty of shortcomings, but they're still people. They're a great people from a great culture, a culture that goes back over 5,000 years, right? I mean, and it's like, treating people with respect, even your adversaries. That's a foundation of diplomacy. And, there's only, you're not gonna, it's a lot hard to work somebody out when you're constantly insulting them, right?
Well, yeah, sure. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like a political scientist, or like I'm not incredibly educated about this, but I mean, like, it feels like the different conflicts, and I mean, like, to use somewhat of a cliche at this point, but like, I mean, like, the proxy wars, like, even with what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, as far as like, we're not fighting over there, but I mean, like pretty much like a lot of the countries in the West, including the US, I believe at this point, have like sent supplies to Ukraine to aid them in their fight against Russia. And it just like, I mean,
yeah.
And just like things, I mean, like when like there's always some sort of tension like that somewhere in the world, and like the degree of involvement that we get in it. I mean, like, being imperialistic, I mean, like, is what the US does. I mean, like, we have a military presence like everywhere in the world, like to a degree that I don't think many other countries have, if any other countries have.
No.
And
none of the resources.
Well, right. And
we spend way more than any other country does.
Oh, absolutely. And but So I mean, like,
I mean, but and so and certainly I definitely think we spend way more than we need to, and a lot of that we don't necessarily spend always
no, but
intelligently.
let me complete this thought. I mean, as far as like, these other countries, like, building up their militaries and everything like that. I mean, you know, these other larger powers, China and Russia. I mean, like, their governments, you know, aren't going to like want to play nice with us too much more, like when they've got the ability to like actually push back. And that's going to be more on people's minds. I mean, like, not to sound like paranoid, but I mean, it's just like, it just feels like it keeps getting closer and closer to war as much as people are trying to pull it like away from it. And yeah, I mean, the number of times that it's been like, whew, almost, when it comes to somebody like launching nuclear weapons and then it didn't happen. It's like, I mean, the probability stays the same, but the odds get worse.
Right. The longer we have them, the more likely it is that it's going to happen. Yeah. Because human error doesn't go away. You know that
Well,
no
yeah,
matter
and just
whatever system you develop, there's still going to be imperfections about that system. Things break. Stuff. Humans make mistakes. Machines break. Computer chips malfunction.
yeah.
Uh,
People make mistakes, people make bad decisions, people read things wrong, yeah.
hmm Yeah, things break, and a bomb falls off an airplane, or a guy drops a wrench and blows up the biggest rocket ever ever built. You know,
Well, right, but I mean, like, and like, even that didn't cause like, like the full on like nuclear disaster, like a nuclear war, I mean, like, one of our missiles blowing up in one of our silos, even if like the full payload went off, would have been, a mountain sized crater in the ground. And
yeah. The closest times we came, it usually came down to like one person, like Arkhipov in the submarine, right, being the third guy, the one out of three to say no, right?
right.
Uh,
Yeah,
or
or
they,
the radar operators that like, see the evidence of, this is what they train you to look for in a missile launch and just going, I don't know, this looks fishy, and not sounding the alarm. The number of times that that's happened, and I mean, like, and if it was a newer guy or like somebody that like, you know, didn't
yeah,
have the same sort of discretion or was like looking forward to it, I mean, like,
yeah.
for any reason, like
And they
any of these
do
times.
typically, I mean, they do hire careful people,
Well,
they're
yeah, of
thoughtful
course.
people, but that's no guarantee. Even careful, thoughtful people make mistakes. Highly disciplined people, people make mistakes. And even that is just like, uh, we're leaving it up to our leader. The fact that, this male, whoever our president is, right? Whoever that might be, in this case it's Biden, but whoever, they get woken up in the middle of the night. They got 10 minutes to make a decision. They've been working, 12-hour days since they've been on the job. No, probably like 16, 18-hour days since they've been on the job. They get a few hours of shut eye. They get it woken up in the middle of the night, and they got 10 minutes to make a decision of whether to launch a nuclear strike or not. You know, uh, it's just too tight. It's too close.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
yeah, and
and the longer that
it's real.
right, we've gotten away with it this long, right? We've gotten away with it since 1945. We've been lucky, right? Our luck is held out, but it won't hold out. The longer you play your luck, the higher your chances will be of getting burned, right? The more things that can go wrong, right? It's not like you're flipping a coin over and over again. It's not like that at all, right? The longer it goes on, right? Like, you potentially, there's more complexity, right? There's so many different things that go wrong, right? And that's the thing with a lot of our systems. They don't get less complex, they get more complex, which often creates more potential problems. So the only true way to, rid ourselves of the risk is to get rid of them altogether, right? And the fewer nuclear weapons we have, then the lower the risk. But here, so I went through I mentioned the first of the five, recommendations, right? Pursue global elimination of nuclear weapons. That was their recommendation. I certainly agree. Their next one, number 2, renounce first use, right? That is, and that's the option that we have. Russia has it as well, but basically the United States has maintained the option of being willing to use nuclear weapons first, not as a retaliation against someone else for attacking us with a nuclear weapon, but being willing to use it preemptively. So they suggest ending that to where even if we maintain nuclear weapons, that we immediately end the option of using them, as a first option, which I mean seems to make sense to me, right? I think Barack Obama actually, when he was in office, said that he limited how he would use it. That we would not use it against countries that did not have nuclear weapons and that were meeting their agreements with nuclear non-proliferation, but that we would still maintain the first use option if we felt that we were under threat from a nuclear power or some type of dangerous rogue nation. We still maintain that first use option. That was under Obama. Of course, Trump expanded the first use option to be much more expansive. But what we need to do now is renounce the option of first use altogether, so that even if we have them, that we would never use them, as a preemptive strike. That if we were to use them, that it would only be after someone nuked us first. Right? Now that's falling way short of getting rid of nuclear weapons, but that's a good first step in that direction. Saying, all right, we still have nukes, but we promise we're not, we're taking this off the table. Right? That we're not going to use nuclear weapons against anyone unless they use them against us first. Then it's on, right? Potentially, but because you need to have that deterrent. So the argument goes. But anyway, renounce first use. That's the second one. The third one is end sole authority. Right, sole authority is the unchecked authority of our leaders, particularly the U.S. Our president, right, to launch a nuclear attack. There's no check on our president whatsoever. If the president decided to launch a nuclear strike, he or she would simply notify the military of their decision. That's it. They may consult advisors, they may consult them, but they don't have to. And there's no process, there's no protocol to countermand a legal launch order. The President of the United States has the legal authority to launch a nuclear strike when he or she feels like it. That needs to end, right? Now that existed, I think, along with first use, right, as part of the sort of wanting to have that rapid response. What's the word I'm looking for? You want to be able to mutually assured destruction, right? That if they were going to strike us, if they were going to hit us, they knew that we were going to hit them with everything we had, and that. So if there was any kind of nuclear exchange at all, we both knew that we would all be wiped out. So that's the argument being, that's the ultimate incentive for nobody to use nukes at all. And that is held so far, right? As long as the system, as all the safety protocols and procedures work, and as long as we keep getting lucky, it'll be okay. And as long as no crazy person, gets through and does their thing, right? As long as they get blocked and stopped, we should be all right. But the longer we keep this stuff going on, the higher the chances that something like this could happen. So, but anyway, the sole authority, that's just asking for trouble. That's just too much power in the hands of one person. We need to develop a new system where, the president has to consult, is required by law, and is not, even if he wanted to launch a nuclear weapon on his own, he couldn't. That he has to consult with, you know, somebody, like the Speaker of the House and, so many members of his cabinet. There's a number of different ways you could go about who we would need to, and it would need to be a mix, right? It couldn't just be like military people.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that would be a mistake. Yeah, like you could have somebody from Joint Chiefs, the head of Joint Chiefs of Staff, his right hand people, his national security advisors, and certain members from his cabinet, and like the Speaker of the House. And it can't be that many because you got to make a fast decision. It's got to be people you can reach within a minute or two. That's the thing, right? You don't have much time.
Right, yeah, and it's got to be like at least so many of the, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's so many, and once more, there's so many things that could go wrong with that, in a nightmare scenario. Like, it's, you just, as long as there's nukes out there, like there's the chance that somebody's going to use them. Like whether it's, justifiable or not, but like, is it justifiable to use nukes like ever, given the devastation and just like worldwide, like kind of consequences?
There's a strong moral argument that there is not. Yes. That there is no justifiable, no matter how much you perceive it protects your country, right? And your country's allies and interests, that its use is so immoral and so devastating, that to use it, you use it, even if you only use it on your enemy, you're not just harming your enemy, right? That radioactive fallout is going to go to other people, and depending on how big the exchange, you could basically wipe out most of human life on Earth. Right.
Well, and civilian casualties should never be, justifiable either. I mean, like in things like that, like in this day and age, when when they can, park a missile pretty reliably within like a 6-foot square, like, I mean, civilian casualties should be, like condemnable, like in any number anyway. Just like the number of times that it's been, a hospital or a school or just grocery store or whatever. I mean, on, whatever side of the argument that you're on, that's wrong. And doing that with nuclear weapons, I mean, like that's an entire city. You're leveling a city, I mean,
we've done that. I mean,
we've done it with carpet bombing, and I mean, like we've done
it with soldiers on horses for millennia.
But I mean, like
radiation.
That scale. Well, yeah, I know. So we haven't progressed any farther than the days of the soldiers on horses, leveling villages and raping and pillaging. Like that's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, I think we have, but with our progress, we also have the capacity.
That shouldn't still be justifiable for like, why do we still have warfare on the scale that we do when like, we're supposedly as far advanced as we are, like, really, like.
Well, I mean, we're
the
more
atrocities that still happen.
We're more technologically advanced than we were, but I mean these advancements just happened. 80 years ago, not that long ago. And 70 years ago. I mean, 75. Even still, like the whole information, revolution that's occurred in the last 20 years. With the microchip and internet and the explosion of information availability to everyone at all times, right? The prevalence of social media and AI, we already talked about that a lot. Our lives have changed extremely rapidly. It was only 100 years ago, you and me, we probably would have been farmers, or working in a factory. Definitely 200 years ago, we definitely.
Well, I mean, 100 years ago, one or both of us would have died in World War I. So, like,
or the flu.
Or of the Spanish flu. Yeah, shit.
But I mean, Yeah, I mean, this is just, right, nuclear weapons are just the sort of logical extension of the insanity of warfare to begin with. It's just taken to its maximum extreme, right? They used it, right, to prevent. I mean, there was a race. There was a race, right, to develop the nuclear weapon to end the war. Right? And we were trying to build it because Germany was trying to build it, and we beat them to it. Germany, it turned out, didn't get that close.
Right.
And, we used it against Japan to end the war because it would have taken a lot of U.S. soldiers. A lot of soldiers would have died. I think maybe like 100,000 possibly to invade the Japanese mainland to end the war that way.
Oh, fun fact: the number of Purple Hearts that they made for the land invasion of Japan was so vast that that run of Purple Hearts that they made are up to within the last like 5 or so years, still the Purple Hearts that they award to soldiers that are wounded in combat now.
Whoa. Where did you read that?
I don't know. It was on the internet, so it was probably. I can't cite the source. I read so many like weird little like trivia blurbs and stuff. I can't possibly remember every website I read it on. But
all right, so let me keep going. I'm almost done.
Go.
I said in sole authority, right? Stop the practice of having our president have unchecked authority to launch a nuclear missile. Make it so they have to consult with, just a couple people on the quick. But here's the other thing that kind of goes in with that, right? Because we're talking about that they have such a short time to make this decision, is to end the hair trigger alert, right? The United States has roughly 1,700 deployed nuclear weapons currently, and there's several thousand in reserve. 400 of these are on missiles in underground silos ready to be launched within minutes of a presidential order. Those missiles are on high alert. They can be launched within minutes. This alert status increases the chance of a launch in response to a false alarm. Now, there have been numerous close calls, as we've already highlighted here over the past 40, 50 years, due to both human and technical errors. And keeping missiles on high alert increases significantly the danger of an accidental war. And it's an outdated, ineffective deterrent. Again, this is like the hair trigger alert was the other thing, right? It's like developed back in the 50s and 60s when Russian and U.S. nuclear forces were ground-based, right? There was either missiles from ground-based missiles or, bombers, flying from land bases. That's no longer the case, right? We still have ground-based missiles and bombers, but we also have now nuclear submarines that are all over the world and have, over 1,000 warheads ready to go at any time, pretty much. So, that basically the hair trigger alert was in case, they have to be able to launch right away before the enemy knocks out all of your military installations and missile silos, right? So you basically need to launch so you can launch, because within a matter of minutes they're going to be there, right? But now we don't have to. We can afford to wait, I guess is my point, right? We don't have, if they wiped out. We don't want them to wipe out our missile silos. We don't want them to wipe out our missile bases on land. But we can still attack them from our nuclear subs, and that gives us time. That buys us, the extra minutes that we need to. Even though technically, you're taking extra time, right? So you're risking, they could wipe out our nuclear silos and our military bases and get us on land, but it gives us more time to confirm that this is a mistake.
Well, yeah, and we got plenty on the subs too, like you were just saying. So I mean, we'll still be fine.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I mean, that's right. I mean, if you're going to have them, you want to have them. If you're going to have a weapon, you want it available in as many ways as possible, so you can deploy it in as many ways as possible. That way, it's harder for your adversary to predict where you're going to strike from. So it makes sense. We have the sea. It'd be crazy not to use it, right? Obviously, what we want to do is get rid of all the nukes,
right?
But since we have nukes available on the sea, there's no need to aggressively try and protect, our land, our land-based missiles and bombers.
Well, and I mean, has any country become nuclear capable and then given it up?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I guess you could say Iran kind of on. That's a TBD, right?
They were developing but I mean, it. They were developing it, but I mean, that's what I mean by nuclear capable. I mean, they didn't have a missile with a nuclear warhead on it ever, right?
No.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody gave it up because it is a deterrent. Because it is a good deterrent. Once you have it, people are a lot less likely to mess with you.
Okay, they got nukes. Yeah,
that's why Israel has it. They're surrounded by a bunch of countries that want to wipe them out. And it is, it hasn't stopped them. It hasn't stopped the terrorist attacks against them. But, everybody knows they got nukes around there. I mean, and it is, I think, there's a strong argument that there would have been a lot more attacks against Israel if they didn't have them. But I don't know. Israel
feels entirely plausible. Yeah.
But Israel is a highly effective military. I mean, they're highly professional. They make everybody in Israel, except for I guess Orthodox or ultra Orthodox Jews, they have to serve in the IDF. So I mean, it's a different deal over there. It's a small country, right? And surrounded by a lot of countries that don't want them there. So they're pretty on top of taking care of themselves. But yeah, I mean, that's a very tense area of the world. But yeah, that's why we don't want Iran, right, to develop nuclear weapons, and because that could be a real tinderbox over there. But like you see with North Korea, that's why they have nuclear weapons. So what a great deterrent that's been for them. That's one more thing. I mean, because there is no more despicable country in the world probably than North Korea. I mean, if you're talking from a perspective of human rights abuses and just the most oppressive, nightmarish, totalitarian state you can imagine. I mean, it's truly terrifying.
No, there's a solid argument there, I think.
That they're so bad that a bunch of countries probably would have kicked the shit out of them already if it weren't for them having nukes. Just because, I mean, I'm not saying that's true, but it's possible that over the last, we're technically still at war with North Korea, right? It's just a truce. It's really just a truce that is in existence between us and North Korea, and between North and South Korea. So there's still active hostilities there, and North Korea is very serious still about wanting to reunify the entire country from North and South together, and I mean, I'd go into this, but I think dictatorships just don't breed good people. I mean, it warps people in really bad ways. And, the systems, as bad as our systems are, I think, typically authoritarian systems are even worse, right? Because they remove a lot of the benefits that democratic system has. Typically democratic systems
personal choice of any type.
Yeah, personal choice. That can be helpful. Free thinking. Right? Yeah. Reason, the use of reason and free inquiry. I mean, that makes a difference. It really does. And it can seem like it's a disadvantage in the short term, but I think it really, being able to speak your mind and it could seem like, oh yeah, the dictatorship's the more efficient, quicker way to go. One person tells everybody what to do and makes all these quick decisions. But, the dictator's power is based on fear and force and oppression, right? So right off the bat already, there's all kinds of options that dictator will never be presented with, right? There's a bunch of stuff that's not on the table to them that's on the table to someone who's leading a free society where more ideas can be considered. So they're always working from a very limited set of choices, whereas, a more free thinking society has more options to choose from. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that's it. In-hair trigger alert. Like I said before, land-based missiles from Russia to the U.S. takes about 30 minutes. Sub-based missiles from a submarine launched from a Russian submarine could get here a lot faster, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So it doesn't take long for those to get here. We should allow for more time to make the careful decision to prevent these kind of mistakes from happening. We don't need the deterrent of having to make a rapid first strike decision like we felt we used to, especially now with nuclear submarines as a separate deterrent. So the fifth recommendation that Back from the Brink and the Union of Concerned Scientists had for addressing these threats is canceling enhanced weapons, right? Like I mentioned earlier, over the next 30 years, the United States plans to spend $1.7 trillion to replace its nuclear arsenal. They recommend that we de-emphasize the importance of nuclear weapons in our security policy and work with the other nuclear armed states to eliminate these weapons altogether. Right? And
let's go back to good old shrapnel. I mean, that was fun.
What?
I said, let's go back to good old shrapnel. That was fun.
Like the good old days. So those are the five. What do you think? Any additional thoughts or supplemental suggestions that you would recommend?
Well, I mean, obviously, in a perfect world, everybody would mutually agree not to, develop or use any nuclear weapons. And if the amount of money that was put into those security policies could instead be put into some sort of nuclear power initiative to I don't know, maybe responsibly use the nuclear material that we already have for various, well-funded, well-regulated, New Deal-esque scale of energy jobs, trying to use up this nuclear power stuff while at the same time trying to, transition those same areas to solar and other sustainable things and just turned it into a nice thing. But I mean, I can hear, the six people that are going to download this laughing right now. So I know that's not.
It's a lot more than 6, my friend.
I'm sorry, 16. But
keep going. It's even higher than that, man.
Okay.
We're ahead.
Something that's, like I said, in a quote unquote perfect world. I mean, war is wrong. Killing people is wrong. There's always, a lot of, the military are the primary casualties of war, but all of the additional stuff that happens as a result of it,
a lot of civilians, yeah.
A lot of civilians and the soldiers that survive war with injuries, be those physical or mental or both.
That just ripples through their families.
Yeah,
right?
just the long lasting effects of war. It's not just the people that die that and they give their lives. And then there's still the people that come back with their lives, but their lives have been utterly changed and in some cases arguably ruined by their experiences from war, and then you add, radioactive fallout to that, and if enough of them go off, a cloud that circles the globe however many times and plunges us into nuclear winter, and now you want crop failure, Now you have famine and disease and more plagues and infrastructure breaks down and there's going to be a run on hospitals and munition stockpiles and it's not going to go Mad Max, but it's if it falls apart, it's going to fall the hell apart. Yeah, no,
it could. It really could.
Yeah. No,
I don't want to believe that it will, but it could.
But yeah, there is a non-zero chance that that is what could happen.
I agree. Yeah, but I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we can and will overcome it. I mean, that's the thing is, and then so what this show's about too is this. It's a complex world. People are complex. Human societies are complex, and our issues are complex, and they don't go away, right? And it requires some complex thought, right? It's not a lot of these things. You can't just read a quick article about it and watch a quick thing on TV about it, and you got it down. A lot of this stuff is, it takes a little bit of thought, especially because a lot of these stories that we talked about tonight they're not hidden. You can access the information very quickly on the internet, but it's not like it's focused on by anyone. You don't have media blaring this type of stuff, more about climate change for obvious reasons, because we see the effects every day now. But I mean, this nuclear war thing's been with us since 45. And it's certainly, I think, I remember being alive in the 80s and being scared about it. And I can only imagine what it must have been like for my parents growing up in the 50s and 60s when they were like having to do like the drills, nuclear. Like
yeah, the bomb drills where they have to hide under their desks.
Yeah, they had to get on their desk. Yeah, and that was
okay. Now you'll be safe.
I mean, that was like in the tornado drill. I mean, did you have tornado drills in school?
No, we don't really get tornadoes here in the valley.
Yeah, I grew up in Ohio, so they had them. They had a lot of tornadoes, so we definitely had tornado drills. And so that was always a thing. There were fire drills, tornado drills. But tornado drills, kind of like a, that's pretty close to like a
fire drill.
It's like a bomb drill, pretty much. Uh-huh. That would be a better deal hiding in the school bathroom than getting under your desk. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have more. You should treat, you want to. Better to treat it like like from the 50s they were hiding under their desk, right? But clearly you got more protection from going to the bathroom, hiding in the school bathroom, than you do hiding under your desk. So
yeah, typically like one small little window and like the thick tile on the walls and stuff. Yeah, bathroom's a good bet.
Well, it's like. Yeah, but that was just kind of the, but that was always in my mind, and that was the early 80s, 82, 83. There was that movie that came out. Shoot, I can't remember the name of it. Darn it, I can remember it, but I can't remember the name of it right, and I'm going to forget it. I'm forgetting it now, but I'll remember it in a couple minutes once the show's over. But it was about Steve Guttenberg was in it. And it was about like a nuclear war happening between the United States and Russia, and what happens to the people, in this town when their town gets hit. Yeah, it's pretty disturbing. It's driving me crazy. I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, so that kind of like made people really aware in the early 80s. It was
the day after.
The day after, that's what it was. Yeah, it was a big TV event too. It was pretty hardcore and disturbing. I was I think 12 or 13 maybe when I saw that. And so, I mean, I think when, the Cold War ended, right, between us and Russia, I think there was a sense that, it's over. We don't have anything to worry about anymore, but that's not true. The hostilities between us and Russia are as bad as they ever were. We're pretty close. And, we have more countries with nuclear weapons now than we did back then. So the dangers haven't gone away, and there's new dangers now, right? The dangers of cyber hacking didn't really exist, not like they do now.
All right.
That's kind of a new danger, right? With the advanced skills of hackers, and again, there's no system that's unhackable. That's like a
Yeah, but like once again, I mean, who's willing to start a nuclear war? You know, I mean,
I mean, there's crazy people out there,
true.
and it's like there's not a lot of them, right? But they
They're
are out
there.
there,
Yeah.
and um, but and yeah, I mean, but it's you can't. And then you say crazy too, but then there's just people who are so determined that maybe they're not crazy, they're just evil. They want what they want, and they'll do anything to get it, and they don't care what that means. They don't care who it hurts. If this somehow, if they could steal a nuclear weapon or they could use a nuclear weapon to advance whatever their agenda is, they'll do it, and they don't care. It doesn't matter how many people they kill or hurt if they accomplish their goal, whatever that might be. There are people like that have killed off their humanity enough, right? I mean, life is hard, and it does a lot of brutal things to people sometimes. There's, people who've experienced horrible things in life, way horrible, far more horrible than I can even imagine or want to imagine, that can warp the human soul. So, it's like, who knows the mysteries of the human heart, good or bad, right? Completely. So we can never trust. It's like absolute power corrupts absolutely. Giving someone that type of awesome power, putting that in the hands of anyone, is a corrupting thing. You can't trust anyone. That's why the sole authority has to be ended. That place, we've been lucky so far. The idea that Trump for 4 years, just blows me away that we gave that guy that authority. It's just that I can't believe we have that many people in our country of that questionable judgment to say, yeah, give him the codes. Give this guy the codes. We can trust him.
It seems to me, yeah. I mean, like it seems to me like the obvious bad move as well. But I mean, apparently to enough people in the right places.
If you want to own libs, bro, you got to do what you got to do. You know what I mean? You got to do.
Man, I guess, but I mean, like,
own the libs.
I wish these people would like find something else to do other than like owning people.
Right. Right. That's what they want to do. They want to go back to that.
Well, yeah.
So anyway, enough of that.
Okay, yeah, that might have been a little.
So anyway, folks,
a bit offsides, wasn't it?
You see where we're going with this, but obviously, a major, an important episode. I'm glad we discussed it. We've talked about a lot of important things, I think, on this show. Certainly, we've talked about climate change and a lot of other things that are very serious. But nuclear war, I mean, what's more serious and vital than that? I mean, the fact that, within a matter of minutes, any of us could be, struck by a nuclear missile, right? I mean, we have plenty to wipe out life on Earth.
And that's instant climate change, I mean, like,
oh yeah,
bam. And then on top of that, the radioactive fallout, like there's a lot that's going to go wrong, and most people aren't going to survive.
Yeah, that would be like
most
our climate change nightmare on roids, right?
Yeah.
And crack, just, yeah.
I mean, like the good stuff too. But
the good stuff, right? Not the cheap stuff. So, I mean, that's the burden, right? That's the burden of power that we have, right? The humans, in just a very short amount of time, have dominated this planet. I mean, really, in just the last, if we were hunter-gatherers for hundreds of thousands of years, we were only farmers for like 10,000. And then the Industrial Revolution, that was only like 150, 200 years ago.
Yeah, fair.
And now it's, it's this high-tech information age. We've gone through all these crazy transitions in a really short time. and we've evolved to wield like swords and bows and arrows and spears, or and to some degree now use hoes and shovels and plows, right?
And nuclear weapons
to build things. But we've taken it to the extreme now, where even though we're really in so many ways evolved to deal with hunter gathering and agrarian life, we're in this new world that we're still ill suited for, right? We're using, I think we're being outpaced by our technology, right? This kind of relates to AI, our previous episode, that we're dealing with a lot of power here. We're harnessing the different and more advanced flows of power as a result of our deeper, more advanced knowledge of science, right? And how to use the different things that are available to us through nature, right? Discovering these new elements, new technologies, new particles, right? And it's like the computing power that is the revolution that came simply from the computing power boost from the microchip, what we've seen in the last 20 years, and the explosion of all the knowledge that's available to us at our fingertips so quickly, and all the things that we're capable of. But we have to manage those things judiciously. These machines of ours, which can make our lives, and have in so many ways, so much better, compared to how hard lives were like 200 years ago. If you had to work 12 hours, 7 days a week in a factory, right? Or if you had to work every day, on a farm, and that's how people did it for thousands of years, and that's all they had. And then, the king shows up with his guys and takes most of your food, as his tax. Life is tough, but it's like, as we've become more advanced, so too have our problems, right? As we have become more powerful, that power cuts both ways. More benefits, but also, more potential threats, dangers. So it's a package deal, and it's up to us how we choose to use it. And definitely getting away. I don't agree. Like, I think I used to feel probably for a long time like there's no getting rid of nuclear weapons, right? That we're stuck with them. That there's no way to trust completely that somebody else doesn't have them. And that is a challenge, right? The trying to verify, and how do you get to that point where nobody has any more at all and nobody's hiding them. And that is a unique problem, but we can definitely get it down, right? We've succeeded in getting it down from like 60 to 70,000 to 8 to 13. So we definitely can knock it down. The more we knock it down, the better, right? The fewer there are, that lowers the risk in itself too. That's the fewer weapons you can have problems with. The fewer weapons there are out there for something to go wrong. That many fewer for you to have to keep track of. A little bit easier for you to keep track of them when there's fewer of them, right? Then once you have fewer, once you're down to like 100 or 20 or 50 or whatever, those final numbers, when you get, then you can get down in the nitty-gritty of figuring out how do we work out the details of knowing that Russia got rid of their last 5, or their last 2 or 3. How do we, right now the job is just getting it down further, getting the United States to go from 5,500, and so continuing to be part of those treaties like START and other, nuclear, non-proliferation treaties to encourage, reduction in military weapons, not just for nuclear weapons, not just for Russia, but for the other countries too, right? So, I think that's getting to that point. Even though it could take a long time to have, total nuclear disarmament, it's not impossible. And even if we can't get to zero, we can get pretty close. Even if we're holding on to like 10 or 20 or something on both sides, that's, so much better than each of us having thousands.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're not wrong there.
And then, even if there's the option too of, and this is a big if, of outrunning it, or I didn't say outrun it, but outgrow it to where, we hold on to 10 or 20 nukes, Russia does, and we do, and maybe some other countries hold on to a few because, there's not total trust. But then we work past all our other problems as we continue to evolve and grow and adapt, right, and improve our relations so that then those final ones become completely unnecessary, right? Once we rebuild or reestablish or establish for the first time a good relationship with these other countries, the proper sense of trust and a proper relationship that includes that, transparency and ability to verify, no, come in, check wherever you want, right? That's the only way it works, is that you allow the inspectors in to make sure you don't have full access. Yeah. But that's only going to come with trust and like respect and like mutual trust between, people who were once adversaries. And it takes time, but it's not impossible. I mean, look how we're close allies with both Japan and Germany. We were bitter enemies with them 70 plus years ago. The most bitter imaginable.
Well, and I mean, or England, even.
Yeah.
So I mean,
the colonists detested the British.
Yeah, things change.
Yeah, so we can evolve past the people we're afraid of, right? The people that are afraid of us. We can evolve past that, but we've got to be able to survive it. We've got to be able to last to get to that point where we fix our relationships with these other countries, where we work things out with Russia, right, and China. And that's not going to be easy. They got a lot of problems with very different societies, but nobody wants to get nuked, right? We have mutual interest in not wanting to nuke each other. And here's the other thing, too, is that we have, all of us, especially in the United States, but not just us, Russia, China, too, a lot of other countries, we have so many other weapons that are not nuclear, that are I don't say just as devastating, but pretty much.
Totally capable of killing lots and lots of people.
Can provide just as much devastation, just not like within a matter of seconds, right? You just have to drop more bombs and send in more planes to do it. But I mean, there were a lot of our bombing missions in World War II that killed way more than the missions that killed, that dropped the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Bombing runs that killed way more than 100,000 in a night.
Yeah. I mean, when you're carpet bombing entire like German cities into complete oblivion, the bombing of Dresden, I mean, that wasn't just one day, but I mean, that was a pretty devastating thing, and
right.
So many of the other things like that, or the devastation bombs, right? I was going to say the devastation by like all the napalm and like the burning down of all the jungles in like Vietnam and freaking Cambodia,
Yep. Oh yeah, and there's still Cambodia and Laos, they're still finding bombs that we dropped 40, 50 years later.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there's still farmers plowing up bombs from World War I and like France and Germany and Belgium and stuff, like where all the like big, like gnarly battles happened. I mean, like there's ordnance being found from the last 100 years worth of wars, wherever those wars were, just with the mass shelling, like of like the modern, 20th century artillery, barrages and things like that. I mean, which those worked fine, but yeah, just like the power to be able to do all of that with like a single bomb being dropped from a single plane or, fired from a single missile, it really is quite breathtaking. But I mean, like, that's too much power.
Yeah. Yep. We gotta rein it in. Yeah, I mean, because nuclear power is good. It's not a bad thing. It's just how it's used, right? If we use it the right way and we use it carefully,
well, yeah, and if it was funded
harnessing-
appropriately and managed appropriately, I mean, it would, it could be an excellent source of power for, a very long time for a great deal of people. But it has to be, just, hyper regulated because of that thing. And, because of that, the regulations, fees and taxes and fines. And, so nobody wants to do it to try to make money. So then why do it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of issues tied in with it. Yeah, nuclear stuff is extremely complicated. So I don't know about you. I think we've beat the dead horse tonight. What do you think, Jordan?
I mean, I'd say we have definitely gone around the block with it.
Yeah, but I've enjoyed it. Hopefully, audience, you've enjoyed it too. It's been a long one. But I have enjoyed it, and it's been a fascinating conversation. And Jordan, as always, always a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to.
Thank you. It's just entertaining, always entertaining and fun. I always get some insightful comments from you, and so anyway, I look forward to our next episode. It's going to be another surprise. We're going to be springing on you here that I'm excited about coming up soon. But until then, take good care of yourselves, everyone, and we will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.